Hi everyone, my name's Tori. Welcome to my channel, Tori Moves. I'm a yoga, Pilates, aerial yoga instructor, and today I'm going to walk you through some beginner tips for doing Pilates on the Reformer. So this is a great video if you are new to Reformer Pilates and trying to see what to expect for your first class, or if you're an instructor and looking maybe for some different things to cue, or maybe if you're a newer instructor looking for things to watch out for in your clients. So each person is going to have their own kind of preferred setup on the carriage. With new clients, I like to start them off at a lighter spring tension. So it's normally 2 red and a blue spring, which is 2 medium and a light spring, just because initially we all kind of have these bad habits when we're lying down, and so you don't want them to be using the wrong muscles for too long and continuing to train the wrong neuromuscular patterns in their body. So if you use a lighter spring tension, people start to figure out more quickly if they're doing it right or not, because if they have too heavy of a spring tension, oftentimes they just focus on where they're feeling it, and they might actually be arching through their back or a couple other things we're going to talk about. So the first thing you need to do is you need to observe how your client is lying down on the Reformer. So they should have their shoulders against the shoulder rest comfortably. Their feet should be able to rest onto the foot bar. And different Reformers work in different ways, but usually you can either move the carriage out, you can gear that out, or you can move the foot bar in or out. And you want to have the knee stacked up over the hip. So now I have a longer torso and I'm a little bit taller, so I can generally be in the standard position, just because my legs aren't super long. If I had really long femurs, I might have to adjust it. Like when I use the Balanced Body Studio Reformers, I kind of keep it in the standard foot bar position, but you could always move the foot bar in or out or up or down to accommodate that. You just want to be careful with moving the foot bar up or down that you're not changing the angle of the shin too much. And you're like, okay, great, I don't know what any of this means. What are we doing? So you'll be lying flat, and I like to start with the heels on for most people, because that tends to make the most sense kind of when people are new. Your hands are down by your sides, and now an important thing that a lot of people forget about is the upper back and the neck. It actually took me like solid year of doing Pilates before I realized I was doing this all wrong. So you want to make sure people don't have this extension through their neck, and this is really common in generally older men or people who have a very kyphotic posture. So you want the chin to be almost pulled in, like they're pushing the back of the head into the headrest. You could also adjust the headrest up a little bit to help accommodate this. And you take a deep breath in, and I always exhale and press out nice and long, and then pull back in. And so something you'll notice is that people who are new to Pilates tend to press in and out very slowly. It's almost like they don't know how the springs are going to react, or it's like they're almost like afraid of breaking the machine, kind of, is what it seems like. So you'll want to encourage them to find like a tempo to follow, like think in 2, 3 and out. 2, 3 can be really helpful for them. And especially initially, like when you press out, you're resisting the springs. And when you come back in, you also have to resist the springs. So it's really common that someone has a strong push out, and then their pull back in is like non-existent, and that bouncing in is a sign that they don't have control and they're not using the back side of the body. So you want it to be nice and slow, and like you're pulling the foot bar towards you. Next, I like to move on to the arches of the feet onto the foot bar, and knee permitting, I like to do that with the legs all the way together to start to connect to the inner thighs. So you have the arches of the feet pressing down, and then this helps to connect the tailbone down onto the mat and the inner thighs pressing together while you're reaching long through the toes. And now I have a problem. I know my chin was probably up in those last few. And even though you're moving the carriage with what seems like your legs, like the only joint action you can see are the bending and extending of my knees, but really I'm thinking about pressing the backside of my body into the carriage. And if you're new to Pilates, Don't worry about trying to do all of these things at the same time. Over time, you focus on one aspect, and then once you've perfected, because nothing's ever perfect, you move on to the next thing that you work on and try to seamlessly connect all of them together. And then you can also do different positions in the footwork. So something that I've been playing around with recently, because I don't have a chair at home, but this is one of my favorite footwork sequences from the chair series, is to press out with my toes onto the foot bar nice and wide, and then, move here a couple of times. And you'll see clients get really comfortable pressing in and out here because you get to use more of your glutes. So it's much easier to press here than in any of the other foot positions. And then I'll pause halfway between out and in, trying to keep the carriage still, and lower the heels and lift the heels and lower the heels and lift the heels, making sure that I'm still breathing. So this is really challenging my control. My pelvis is still, I'm not moving at all through my back or my hips. Good. And then you can hold it here, and you can move the carriage out an inch and in an inch while keeping your heels lifted the whole time. And then pressing all the way out nice and long. I always like to end by having a nice stretch if we've done a lot of flexion, and then come all the way back in. Next, we're going to move on to bridging. So you'd want to make sure the headrest is down for that, and your hands will be down by your sides. And generally with newer clients, I actually have them come down onto the foot plate or this platform surface that isn't moving, because even just this action of having your feet on a surface higher than your hips, even if the carriage didn't move, which adds another element of instability, this is still more challenging than being on a level surface with the hips. And you want to gauge the ability to keep the carriage in and lift the hips up. Another thing to watch for is people want to, especially if you're a yogi like me, pop out through their rib cage rather than lifting from their hips. So I'll show you how these two things look different. So this is lifting from my upper body. You can see my rib cage is popping, and then I maybe can articulate down. And then this is really engaging through my lower body. So I'm really pulling with my hamstrings. I'm lifting up. My rib cage stays pulled in the best that I can do. And then my rib cage, I think about all my ribs touching down first, the ribs on the back side of the body, not the front, because it wraps all the way around. And then my hips pressing down. And then once you feel like they've mastered that, bring them up here. And some people have circumstances outside of their control where bridging up on the foot bar just might not be a great thing for them to ever do. And that's okay. There are plenty other ways to strengthen your hamstrings. And then the same thing here. Now you really, really, really have to pull, trying to keep the carriage still, and slowly lower all the way back down. So just that movement of my feet from here to here already made the exercise a lot harder. And if you're teaching people Pilates who are used to a different type of exercise modality, they might be like, oh, no problem, this is super easy, I'm going to do 20 of these. But it's all about the tempo and the part of the body that you're engaging. So as the instructor and as the student, listen for what the instructor is cueing you to focus on. That's when you get the most out of the movement. And as the instructor, you have to notice what the person in front of you is struggling with and how to correct that. So now one last thing that I really love to teach beginners, I'm going to change my spring tension. So normally I start most people with a red and a blue. Now if you notice that someone's chin was up and their shoulders are rounded when they walk in the door, when they lie down on the reformer, a red and a blue might be a lot for them, especially if they're maybe a smaller woman, because that's a sign that they don't have a lot of this upper and mid back strength. So you might want to do maybe just one red or a red and a yellow or one heavy spring, play around with that a little bit. Even if someone is healthy, because you want them to be able to engage properly. Now this was one of the hardest things for me when I first started, was it's called the mid-back series or the supine arms. So I'm going to use my longer loops because that's kind of what lines up with my shoulder rests. Now you'll have your toes on the foot bar. You'll start to just push into the straps, and I have everybody hold here. So already like this is a little bit of work, and you want to make sure like if their shoulders are already super disconnected from the carriage, that's an area they need to work on. You want to be able to pull the shoulders down while maintaining the ribs pulling in, which is a concept that you'll have to continuously explore with your students, because it's not something anyone gets on the first try unless they were like a dancer or gymnast. Now, the other thing to watch for is these like floating legs. Encourage your students to keep their heels together, because that instantly connects the inner thighs through the pelvic floor, and then you should be all good to go. So you'll take a deep breath in, and then you'll exhale, press your hands down by your sides. And so things you'll want to watch for that the tension is too heavy is if you see people like pushing with almost, it looks like their neck. It should all be coming from, the back, the mid-back, behind the bottom of the shoulder blades. Think of like your armpit area. That's really your lats, your serratus, all of that. And they should be able to keep their elbows extended the whole time and reach through their fingers at the bottom here. So there's space. There's tons of space between my ears and my shoulders. And then the other thing, once I see that they could do all of that and they're not extending at their wrists, then I'll have them take a deep breath in and exhale, nod, lift their chin to their chest. And I want them to connect this idea of pushing into the straps a little bit more. And then slowly lower the head down, but keep the arms there. So they're having to continuously control that. Deep breath in, exhale. And this is another concept that takes a while for people to understand, that you're in this position lifting from your mid-back. So this is coming from, I'm thinking of lifting between my shoulder blades, not at my neck. And then slowly lower all the way back down. I normally only do 3 in my beginner classes, but then once you get a little bit more advanced, I make you do a few more, and then we do little fancy stuff here and little leg beats. But you have to be able to hold that position with integrity before you can add on any of the flair. So I normally do that for a round and then take a little break, deep breath, and then I have them press all the way down by the sides. And then go into triceps. So our biceps get a lot of work in our day-to-day. And for the most part, many of us have weak triceps by comparison. And this will greatly help to improve your posture or your client's posture, because it helps pull and keep your shoulder resting in the correct position rather than rounding forward. It's one of many things that does that. And then you can add on here as well. You can start to get some coordinated movement going with your clients. Exhale, press, and just lift here all at the same time. So now they're challenging their neuromuscular system to do 2 things simultaneously. And you want to, of course, be doing this with the breath. Then come back down, and we'll do a few rounds of that and then take a rest, maybe like 8 to 10, not a million bajillion reps. So last one. I press the hands all the way down by the sides, turn the palms in to face the body, and so you want to make sure the shoulders are not all the way up against the shoulder blocks. And then reach your arms out to the sides and press in. So I showed the wrong thing there. You'd only want to reach out a few inches at first and then press in. And you're trying to see how well people can control this movement to the side. And this is probably the most challenging position to control the carriage movement. Because the further your hands move away from your body to the side, the more challenging it becomes. And so you want to inhale as you open and exhale as you close. And I will probably do fewer of these, maybe like 5 or 6. And then I might end with a round or 2 of circles if the clients have shown success in all the other areas and like they need a little challenge. Good. And then we'll set our carriage all the way back in. So that's usually what I would do as like a standard beginning to my class if I'm teaching new people who are beginners. It's not the most exciting Pilates, but there's so many different things going on if you're new to Pilates that you can really dig deeper instead of constantly coming up with new moves for your clients. Think about how to deepen the ones that you already do, and that might be by adding in a pause and a hold, or changing the tempo, going a little bit slower or a little bit faster. which helps you out as the instructor because you can take pieces of the things you've already taught and just tweak them a little bit, and the clients get a better workout and they feel like they're doing something different even though it's all the same thing. So if you have any questions or any videos or things you would like to hear about, leave it in the comments below. If this video helped you out, give me a thumbs up. If you hated it, give me a thumbs down. And I'll see you next week.